you know, George, you're gonna have to do a little bit of introduction. But what I can tell you guys is that George Davis is the current deputy executive editor at Nationwide News, and you may also remember him from the Sportsmax Sports Zone if you are a fan of that show. Everybody was. And he is a professional reporter. We'll be talking, yes, about networking, but he also wants to speak a lot on something that I think is very important and you guys will find very interesting, which is just reporting, news reporting. And so, George, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. So, good evening, folks. Happy to have the ladies here. Thank you for making the time. So my career in journalism began in 2005, a couple weeks after I left university. I always knew that I wanted to be a journalist. I turned down the opportunity for additional studying in a field that I surmised that I had no long-term interest in, and I was correct. So I've been in this profession since 2005. Started as a sports producer, then a sports reporter, and then I've gone into news. I think, I have developed key competences in the area of sport and news, current affairs, everything. So I'd like to think of myself as an all-round compass journalist, and it is by design. Many people, they stick to one area, that's fine, but I've always felt that you are more useful to the organization that you're a part of. And even if you have dreams of becoming an entrepreneur, by developing competencies across all areas. I won't tell you that if I'm good or not. That's for the audience on the side. But what I can tell you is that I have indeed built up key competencies in critical areas of sport and journalism that I think have served me well and puts me in a position to speak to you. Now, the issue of networking. Oh, by the way, I began my career at Nationwide News, as I said, actually I was an assistant. No, I was a production assistant. So the lowest rung ever you can find. And I had to learn all over because I didn't study journalism. I studied marketing and international business. I didn't go to school for journalism, thank God. I learned my craft inside the newsroom from some of the very best to have done it. And it was difficult to adjust for me because I see the same thing in some people. So you go into a newsroom or you're going into an organization, you believe you are bright, you believe you know many things, you may even believe you know everything. And you go and there's an adjustment process when if you were a star at something in university or a few things, and you're suddenly going into an organization where it's difficult for you to catch the pace of what is required or speak the language of what is required, you're going to get frustrated. And then when you see people who have no tertiary training and they are ahead of you in the area, in the field, you start to doubt yourself. And then it's only after you humble yourself and accept that this is a new environment, I'm going to have to learn from scratch. It is only at that point that you begin to learn, you begin to absorb the lessons in your environment. It is only at that point that you start thinking and acting like a journalist and putting yourself on the pathway to competence in the required areas. So I had to go through that humbling process. I left university as I was debate captain. I went to 3 world universities debating championships. I won Caribbean intercollegiate debating competition for university. I was the best speaker from the Caribbean every time. So I felt I was the bee's knees going into the journalism. I went to the University of Technology, sir.
Okay.
Yes, and I thought that I was the it, and as I noted, I had to humble myself and just to start from the basics, building blocks, all the way up, and that was a chastening experience, but a very vital experience for me. Now the thing is, I made my way in an environment where there were people around who wanted to teach you things. And then there were people who didn't care whether you learn or not. They just came, did their own, and they left. No, I could have gone one of a few ways. I could have been impressed by those who came and focused on their thing alone, tunnel vision. You know, like those students who come to school and it's just academics alone, no extracurricular, they just come study and go home. When they graduate, all of them have the same thing on their resume, a GPA of 4.0 or 3.8 and nothing else. So you are not attractive to an employer. So very early I said to myself, well, you know, why would I want to be that narrow focused and just so restricted or constricted? I want to have some room, some latitude to my development as a journalist. And so I cottoned on to those who wanted to teach me something. And I was always asking questions, always interrogating ideas. As I said, I had the debating background, so I was used to it. And I love an argument more than anybody else that you could probably know. Yeah, I could argue for a whole day. And I think that I'm at my best when there are 10 people in a room with one opinion and I have the only counter opinion and we're going at it. I like that. Most people don't like that. I like that. And as a journalist, you have to be inquisitive. You have to want to argue because it is in arguing that you sharpen the perspective you hold. And it is also in arguing that you can debunk some of the misconceptions or half-truths that you held because you will hear someone say something, make the point, support the point with facts, and then you realize that, that is the right thing. I had the wrong thing all along. And so you learn. So arguing is a very healthy, a very necessary part of a journalist's toolbox. I'll give you more on that in short order. So it was early. Journalism, in my view, was about building up your competencies, knowing exactly what you wanted to be from very early. You know, people often ask 18-year-olds, so what you want to be in life? And they say they don't know. People look at them weird. Some people like, you don't know what you want to do when you're 18 or you're 25 and you don't know what you want to do with your life. It doesn't matter. You can be 40 and don't know what you want to do with your life and then come up on the thing that you want to do at 41. But you have to know what you want to do. So very early, I knew that I wanted to be a journalist of substance. I wanted, when I was reading a sports report or reading a news report, that people would take me seriously from the moment they heard my name. So, okay, George Davis, all right, a young man, yeah, serious about what I do. That is the kind of feeling I wanted people to have. I wanted my colleagues to trust me, to be a man of research, a man of facts, a man of strong opinions, but not pig-headed about the opinions. Not to hold on to an opinion just because it's my opinion, but to hold on to an opinion because the opinion was very well informed and crafted, and with the grace to be able to say, you know what? I yield to your line of reason because you've presented an argument that is superior to mine. It is better than the position that I held. So I wanted to make my teammates see me as that kind of person. And I wanted them to have confidence in me, to trust my judgment, to trust my decision making, and to see me as someone who represented a strong point of the organization. You know, they always say that when you're in a team, and if a team is losing, the late, well, not late, the great Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson always said that when the Manchester United players had played a bad half of football, and if they were losing or if they weren't playing well and the game was drawn, even if they were leading and they were playing badly, he'd go into the dressing room with them and he'd ask them to say, he said to them, look at the person beside you. Just look around the room and look at the person beside you. You see who you're playing with? How can you be putting in a half-arsed effort to support the work that these players are doing, players of this caliber? And the players would tell you that what they did when he said that to them was look around for me and realize that, right, this man is beside me, this man a top baller, and I have to do better to support him. The man a top baller, and I have to do better to support him. I wanted to be one of those persons who people could look to and feel confident about the team that we had. You'd look at George and you know that George would give you maximum effort, and beyond maximum effort, he would give you quality. I had this weird thing when I was in the formative stage of my journalism. And as I said, I've been here since 2005, 19 years. For the better part of 19 years. I worked for government in 2 years, but beyond that 2 year stint, I've been in media straight through. And even for those 2 years, I was still doing part-time work in journalism. I've covered everything. I've covered horse racing in Jamaica. When I say covered it, I mean I have analyzed it. I have been a commentator. I've done that in Jamaica. I've done it in Barbados. I think I went to Barbados like 5 times last year to do the big race days at the Garrisons, and I was invited over as part of a TV production, a TV broadcast. I was the lead anchor for that. I've done the NBA. I've done more NBA All-Star games than every other journalist in Jamaica combined. I think I've been to 5. I've been to I've done everything. I've done track and field. I've done general elections. I've done general elections in Jamaica. I've done general elections since 2007. Yeah. 2007, 2011, 2016, 2020, and the one to come next year. I've done local government elections. I've done general elections coverage in Trinidad and Tobago and in Barbados. I've done hard news. I've done current affairs. I've done sports. I've done all of that. And the one thing I always wanted to do, amid all of that, I wanted to be someone who was equipped to take on difficult tasks. Now, I imagine that I'm speaking to you in a way that most people would not. And here's the thing. Here's why I say that. I find that a lot of people in our profession, they are interested in the bright light. So someone will say, why you want to be a journalist? Become one up on TV. That's a rubbish reason for wanting to be a journalist. Yeah. Or I want to be a journalist because I want to see my name in the paper. I want to see my profile on a website, or I want to see myself on Instagram. That's not a real reason, because to do that, to get there is easy. To get there is easy. To get respect there is very hard. And to remain there is also very hard. Because what we have in large part these days, you have people, because quality is so thin, and I'm going to come back to the quality point in very short order. Quality in many places is thin. You have a lot of people doing a lot of things, but you don't have a lot of quality, because the people there are not students of the craft. People are not students of journalism, so they don't read to feed their curiosity. You don't watch the work of your colleagues in the business, and you don't watch the work of people outside of your jurisdiction. The things that have helped me to hone my craft over time, I watch a lot of late night television in the US. Yes, so I used to watch a lot of Jon Stewart and Daily Show. I watch Stephen Colbert. I watch Late Night with Conan. I watch those things. I used to listen to a lot of Twin of Twins, Spirit Up volume things. People say it's comedy. I found more in it than comedy. And I watch a lot of podcasts, people arguing, people making point and counterpoint. I like to watch British Parliament, yeah, opposition and the government going at it. I like to watch those things, not because of any other reason. And I like to see how different people do different things in the area, in the field, and I take bits and pieces from this person, that person, that person. Some people say, boy, I don't watch TV, I don't watch my rivals. I'm so good, I don't even watch my rivals. Of course, you have to watch your competition. You have to watch people at other media hosts. You have to watch people in other fields. If you're strong in basketball, you watch a football game to hear how the commentator handles football. Maybe you can get some tips to help you in basketball. You can go and watch swimming, a sport that is left field from what you're doing if you're specializing in track and field and football. You watch swimming, you are guaranteed to pick up something from every sport that you pay attention to. Now, on the quality point, quality takes a lot of hard work. It takes scholarship. You have to, our profession, it doesn't pay anything at the entry level. And many people are frustrated and they don't get beyond the entry level in the profession because they are stuck on the low wages, and they say, boy, media don't pay. I can tell you that media pays, but you have to have the quality to go up the totem. And when you go up the totem, then they have to pay you, because suddenly you are a talent that they can't find anywhere. You can't close your eyes and find another so and so. You can't just call it random and have a role. You have the Premier League final to commentate, or the Manning Cup final, or the Da Costa Cup final, or the Champions Cup final. It's called random Joe Blue to come. No, you won't get the same thing you get if you ask Donald Oliver to do it at Sportsmax, who's the best in the business, or Lance Whitaker, who's the grandfather in the business, or Dean Smith, or Dwight Jeremiah, or one of those guys. You won't get someone to analyze as well as Vijay Williams from Sportsmax does, because these guys are the leaders in the field, because they pay so much attention to their craft. They have put a lot of work in it. Donald has been at this for 20 odd years. I think Donald was doing school football commentary when I was in university. Yeah. So he's vastly experienced, has committed a lot of time to the craft. I worked with him closer for 7 years. I saw him, how he prepared, very detailed, very meticulous. But you have many people who don't see that level of work. They hear him commentating and reaching for grand phrases when something momentous happens in the game, and they think it just comes like this. They think Peter Drury, the outstanding English football commentator, just finds it like this. Peter Drury's notes are like this thick for every game. Details, details, details. It takes work. So I'm saying quality takes a lot of hard work and dedication. It's almost like you're at school. The profession of journalism, just like medicine, just like law, it's continuous learning. You have to devote a lot of time to develop the craft. As I say, you have to feed your imagination, you have to feed your information base, you have to be taking things from various areas to infuse into the product that is you, and then you start getting results. And when you show the consistent quality, then no boss can tell you that, boy, I only paying you peanuts, I only paying you pennies. No, you can be able to command what you want, and you can even be able to sell your services to the highest bidder. And if there is not a highest bidder to pay you for where you think you are, you start your own thing, and you live off that. So I say that about quality to move to this. It is through quality that you make the best contacts in sport and journalism. Yeah, that's where the networking part comes. Networking is not going to networking dinner and shaking people's hand and taking people's WhatsApp number and blah blah blah, taking their Instagram hand. That's not networking. That's just hobnobbing. That's just a friendly day out. What is networking? Networking is leveraging your standing in the field to make the relationships that can cause you to stand out in field. Let me give you a good example. When I was making my way, I can only give you from my perspective. When I was making my way in journalism in the early days, in sport, I then transitioned to a news reporter. Yeah. And when I transitioned to a news reporter, I was the news reporter in charge of crime. So I'd go to all of the crime scenes, see man head blew out, see I remember one where some gunmen locked a grandmother and a child in a house, set the house ablaze, and they perished inside. And I never forget that one. I've seen all of those things. Yeah. So when I was in that phase, one of the things I did was I would speak to people from the community on the sidelines of where the police were, and they'd give me information. I'd report that, but never did I make clear who spoke to me or told me what. So what happened was, by virtue of how I treated those sources, those people would call and give me information routine, and I could always call them, say, yo, something I did, I'm told, yo, Spooky, what go on, blah, blah, blah. I say, oh, I'm Mr. Judge, so on, so this, that, our youth, at them time, little youth, so on, so on, so on, so on. So you build that by virtue of the fact that people who give you information trust you. The more quality stories you start churning out is the more people become interested in you. People will contact you at your place of employment to just reason with you about aspects of your work, and then they may know someone who has a story to tell, and they recommend you. You take that story, you treat it well, and suddenly you start developing contacts. So that was how I went about it. I remember way back in the day when Cash Plus was all the rage. For those youngsters who don't know Cash Plus was this Ponzi scheme run by a man called Carlos Hill, which promised to give you 10% on your investment every month. Yeah, it was the most Ponziest of schemes, but people thought, people thought that, nah, it's not a Ponzi scheme. And they went in and he robbed them blind. But when Cash Plus was all the rage, there was another Ponzi scheme called Intertrade that involved the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, if you don't know, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the richest church in Jamaica, and people have money up to stone dog, but people don't stone dog anymore, but you understand, I get the point. And they went into this investment with Intertrade, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they lost $2 billion. And among the people whose money the church invested, a couple named Lawrence, the Lawrence couple, and they said they called the station and asked to speak to me. I was surprised because I don't know them. So the gentleman and his wife came to see me, and they said, young man, we came to see you because we listened to Nationwide, and we've heard your work over time, and we think that you are bright, we think that you are fair, and we think that you will give us justice where investigating this thing is concerned. It filled me with so much confidence because it is just by my work that the people who took a chance with me. That was one of the biggest stories I worked on. It was an exclusive story, reporting it, and the Adventist Church responded, and a whole heap of things happened by virtue of that investigation. And people now started to associate me with investigative stories. Before that, something happened, which I think I regard as the biggest thing in my journalistic career to this point. I don't know how many of you would have would have remembered something called the Cuban light bulb scandal. I worked on that story when it came. Someone called, I answered the phone and I said, young man, go to the fax machine. With a fax machine there, maybe some of the people don't even know what fax machine is. But anyway, use your imagination. And when I went to the fax machine, people just started coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out. And when they finally stopped, and I had this huge pile, and I was going through, I was like, shit, but this is a breakdown of the government's program to distribute free light bulbs to Jamaica that the people are actually charging for and everything. So I ran to Cliff Hughes, CEO at the time, but still the CEO, and said, look here. And he said, what will you get this? And I was telling him. And then we all gathered and we started working on it. And the heavy hitters in the newsroom at the time recognized it was a huge story because that story eventually brought down our government. And they wanted to claim it. And Cliff said, no, 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 no. The young man, he was the one who got it. Allow him to do the main story. You and you can do follow-ups, blah, blah, blah. Allow him. I want to see him prepare from this, the thing. And I went, and that was my first big thing working on. So that then intertrade and people associated me with investigative journalism. And then people started calling me, giving me tips, calling me, asking me to investigate things, calling me, asking me to that. People had it, if you have a problem and you want somebody to investigate it, I go right the way through. George is the man. If you want a source where you can give information and you don't have to worry that nobody ever knows say you talk, George is the man. And that's why I developed that reputation. To this point now, I have a contacts book. I can call the only person I'm about Jesus. Yeah, maybe through Jesus now on the phone. You understand? I can call anybody and ask anything, and people tell me things off the record, knowing that over my long history, they've never heard me compromise anybody, and they expect me to be fair. There are politicians that adverse reports have emerged about, and I'll call them and say, listen, I have this thing working on, we have a good relationship. I can't hold it, but I want to inform you that this is what I'm going to do. So I'm giving you time to prepare your response. And so, boy, I respect that, because I could have just heard it in the news just so, and then I would have been caught with my pants down. By the time the report came, they had something to say. So, meanwhile, Minister so and so says blah 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 in relation to so and so and so, and people respect that. That's how you network. Yeah, you don't network, as I said, by going somewhere. You network based on the quality of your work. I show you something else about networking. When I was president of the Press Association of Jamaica, I did two stints. I had several opportunities to recommend to the US Embassy, who came to me directly, to recommend young women for postings with sports journalism programs in the USA. So they'd be there for like 3 weeks, going across several states on an international visitor fellowship program run by the US State Department. And I would look at the work. So they say, all right, George, can we get somebody in print journalism? And I said, okay, fine. And I'd go back through and I'd look at the women I saw in print media, whether they were working for one of the mainstream papers or they were contributing to a website or whatever. And I just called what I thought was most competent based on the quality of their work. They got that opportunity. There are a couple of people who got that opportunity, high profile ones. I won't call their name, they know themselves, but they have benefited from this. So you see, what's the network that was built between myself, them, and the US Embassy? It was because of their work, because I'm not giving my friend, because I'm not saying the idiot look at the people in the program go flop. No, yeah, or somebody who's disruptive, rambunctious. I'm sending someone who, based on the quality of their work, I think that they can benefit from the opportunity and that they can also be an ambassador. So networking does not exist without a portfolio of quality work as the basis for people forming relationships with you sufficient for you to benefit from their friendship and their close support. As I say, I can call any shadow cabinet minister and ask them things off the record and get information. I can call anybody in cabinet and get information. I can do that because of the work I've put in over time. And people spread the word. So I'm going to say, listen, call so and so, because at that time when I was in that problem or this issue came about, he spoke to me. It's funny, I'm saying that because today a lady called me from New York to talk about an issue involving her brother who's Alzheimer's, and his accounts at the Central Bank of Jamaica, have been compromised and power of attorney has been changed, all of those things. And she said someone in New York gave her my number and said, boy, if there's any journalist in Jamaica who can help you, George can. So even today, that happened today. Yeah, we're supposed to have a wholesome conversation at 3:15 on Tuesday. So I'm just saying, don't believe at the start that you're going to network just like that. You have to put out the work. You have to be consistent. You have to be fair. One of the things that journalists don't do well, trying to chase a big story, trying to chase a big headline, you cut corners, you damage people's reputation. Yeah, you burn people's fingers. You will never recover from that because you're going to develop a reputation as someone who can't be trusted or someone who is not fair. Alongside the stain of being someone who can't be trusted, equally as damaging for a journalist, is a journalist who is not fair. People can say, listen, you beat me hard with the report, you know. Yeah, you are beat me hard with the commentary that you make, you know, or when you the take you gave when you were on your sports show, boy, that was harsh, you know. But at the same time, I have to say, boy, it was fair because you did this to balance. You must always think of being fair. Nothing is wrong with being hard. Nothing is wrong with giving somebody both barrels. But have you given them a chance to respond? And if two people, say for instance, two men, two women, let's use two women. Two women are vying for the post of president of Netball Jamaica. You have one that you like, right? But one of them comes on your program and you give them a half an hour interview talking about their mandate and telling you why the other person is inferior and unworthy and blah 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 blah. Yeah, and you don't offer the same platform to the other person. And after a while, now you see, look bad. You give the other person 5 minutes on the show. No, that's not fairness. You have to give half an hour, and you have to be able to tell your viewers, your subscribers, your listeners, whatever. Yeah. That look, I asked Angeline to appear on the program in the same segment, yeah, but she declined. The invitation is still open because I spoke to her rival for half an hour last Wednesday, and I believe in the sense of fairness, Angeline should get the same amount of time on the same platform in the same prime time to advance her case why she should be the next woman to lead Netball Jamaica. That's the kind of thing that you should do. If you build your career on that, then networking becomes a matter of course because people who are a part of the moving and shaking of the country are always looking for people they can trust, they can confide in. And you have to be one of those as a journalist. It starts with quality of work and a quality of portfolio. Mr. Andrew, it's 5:31.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've covered sufficient up to this point. I think I have, but if I have not, I'll crack on again. But I want to pause to ask any of our friends here if they have any question to ask based on what I've said. I know that those who joined late may have missed a few things, but I'm sure they will have caught on to sufficient things that they perhaps want to be expanded before we wrap.
Well, I mean, George, I think you did an excellent job with covering networking. It has changed my perspective on the topic, first of all, and I just want to recap a little bit in terms of what I took from it. So I have three main points that you had brought
Stick up in Andrew. Stick up in
Yeah.
Andrew. I want you to go to the three main ones, but something I forgot
Yeah.
that I think is important. One of the things that some journalists do with their sources and their key contacts, they load them up. Never do that. I remember in 2019, I went to an event at Terra Nova, and a certain journalist was there, and he was very close to the minister, a certain minister at the time. And he went in there, walked in, and saw the minister across the pool, and calling the minister by first name, like he would say, Jonathan, you walk one man, wait. And you know, the minister went over and shook his hand and thing. But when he left, the minister was heard to say, yo, what are you to be with someone? I make a whole world to know something doing a link like that. And I shook my head and I said, see, you should be able to go into spaces where you know people in key positions, in key organizations. You pass them like you never know them, like I first say them. Nobody needs to know that you are good friends with certain people. In fact, when nobody knows, it's the best way. And I would never have greeted anybody that I'm tied to. There are many people in government in key areas that me and them are like so, but you would never know. You don't see me at their birthday parties. You don't see me us out having a drink. And in public, when I see them and I have to greet them, outstretched hand shake. Minister, how you do? Good to see you, man. You know, thank you for coming, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, all the best to you, and I'm gone. You would know that we're on the phone attack. Well, go on, dog, because that's how we wrap off the air. So I'm saying discretion is very necessary. do not load up your sources. Don't advertise the contacts you have that are between you and those people. That's the last point.
Oh, that's an excellent point as well. So, I mean, I was recapping now. I think I have four main points that I need to take from your discussion a while ago, your presentation. So, the first one, of course, guys, and I know Azari and who else? And Alika joined us. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. So, quickly recap in terms of networking, the quality of your work will speak for itself. It will make people be impressed. Not only, not, and you, of course, George, you can correct me if I'm misinterpreting, but
Yeah,
like,
man.
not only in the industry and with your colleagues, but also with persons who would reach out to you in terms of wanting to carry a story or bring news to you, which is a part of it which I never really understood. There, you're networking with both outside and inside with your colleagues. You know, with
Yes,
your,
yes.
so you're building a network with people in the public sphere that can, you know, help your career as well, and that's very important. So that's also related to building trust and reaching out to persons around a story. So you did tell us a story when you went on the site for news reporting for a crime scene. You know, you speak to the people at the crime scene, and you be very engaging in that way. So make sure that you don't just stick to yourself. You know, speak to only the persons who are directly related to the story. You know, get some surrounding details and from people all around, and that would help to also build a network. Being fair in your reporting will build trust and respect for you again, and people will always want you to handle their news or their information. And then relates to that, I had a little thing, you know, which was controlling your bias, which is also related to number 4, which is being discreet and discerning. So you're not supposed to appear or be. I think appearance is just as bad as being biased with your news reporting. So in public, you know, you may see big people who are big parts of stories, like ministers of government, people who have influence. You know, be very discreet with those kinds of contacts. They may not like it, and it may not reflect well on your work. So that those are my takeaways. And I think they were very important. I never thought about a lot of those in such, you know, an academic or like, you know, tactical, practical way.
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to add as well, Andrew, if you may. If
Yeah.
I may, there was an incident recently that I had to deal with, where I had to mediate in a dispute between a senior reporter at a TV station and the hierarchy of the Jamaica Football Federation. They had withdrawn his accreditation. They refused to accredit him for football games because he accused one of the leaders of giving him information to write stories in the recent presidential election. And I found that amazing because I'm saying the golden rule of journalism is you don't reveal your sources. So how could you tell your bosses that so and so at the JFF had given you information to write about the JFF itself? You don't do that. And the JFF was adamant that it would not accredit the gentleman to future games because he had violated their trust. They couldn't trust him. Them say, look, if you want to buy a ticket and come in the stadium, fine, but we ain't accrediting him. So I'm just saying how simple things like those can burn relationships and cause a journalist to be on the outside looking in when they should be inside the arena from where they can work best.
Wow. Thanks for that last point right there. Protecting your sources. I did not have that down, but I think it was in my mind also, protecting your sources. So okay, we're gonna open it up to questions. I know you guys have some questions. I also have some questions. 3 mainly. I'll ask one now and then later on. But you spoke about your career, George, and all the different areas that you are in, have worked in. How do you maintain competency in politics, sports, you know, like all those things? How do you keep up? You had mentioned it, you know, you watch TV shows, but in terms of subject areas, you know, if you go, how do you do it? What's your method?
I would confess that perhaps I have a slight advantage over many people in that. How do I explain it now to make it make sense? All right, let me try the simplest way. For our profession, the good ones are the ones who make time to absorb information. I like to read. Some people can get the same information I get from watching podcasts or from listening to something or from watching TV. I don't really watch much TV unless it's live sport or news. If I'm watching a movie, I feel like I'm wasting my time because I'm saying, "But this isn't real. Why am I still watching something that's not real?" But anyway, yeah. So my advantage, I think, comes from the fact that I'm a reader by nature. So most people would say, "Boy, there's a 200-page document." For instance, there was this issue that's in the news now. Some of you may not know about it, involving Sandals and Adam Stewart and his father's Jamaican, just said baby mother, yeah, and fighting over the assets after Butch Stewart died and everything. Adam Stewart's affidavit was 558 pages. I read it right through, and I was excited to go home and read it over the 2 days. So I get excited to get things like this. I'm always reading, constantly feeding my information base. And as I said very early out, I looked at the landscape and said, but there's no journalist operating in Jamaica who has competence in sports and news. You have people who are expert in sports, know not more news. People who are expert in news, know not more sport. I don't want to be that. I want to be the one with everything. And I've worked hard to try to build that. So again, I told you it's a conscious decision. I knew exactly what I wanted to do early, and I'm continuing to work to build up those competencies. But it's the secret is no secret. I'm just a reader by nature.
Reading. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I'm a reader too. Yeah. Everyone else, welcome to either type in a question or unmute and ask George a question. Please go ahead, Ruthan.
Okay, if you hear the background noise, it's those training
Fine.
outside. Pardon me. So you spoke about how you're able to balance news and sports. Now, how do you differentiate when you're in your writing? Do you at any time get confused with writing like hard and soft news?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Because it's what turns off most people because there are two different writing styles. All right. News writing is more detailed. Yeah. News writing is more detailed and people expect you to go into the details. Sport is different because usually with sport, what drives sport is that you're reporting after the fact. So you're reporting the result of a game, you're reporting the outcome of a performance, you are reporting on the status of a championship. Yeah. So it's slightly different. So when you're writing for news, you know that you have to, after a while, you don't want to consciously tell yourself to go into the mind of a news report. And I do both of the things, the same things daily. But you have to then hone a writing style where it straddles both news and sports. So you know that news, you have to be more detailed in what you are doing, more deliberate. You have to explain the definitions. For instance, if I say the 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 whistleblower at the Ministry of Labor benefited from the law concerning protected disclosures, then I know that the next sentence I have to define what a protected disclosure is. Also, quickly, not too long, state who are the people who a protected disclosure can be made. So in sport, you don't need to explain an acrobatic bicycle kick is or what a blistering 200 meters clocking is. It's different. You're just reporting after the fact. You're describing a performance. You're giving the result of an event. But news has more detail because it has to have the structure to make sense, and people expect more substantive explanation where the news stories are concerned. So that's how you differentiate it. And after a time, you adapt your writing style to be able to produce copy under either heading seamlessly without mixing it up or mixing yourself up. I hope I've explained it, Ruthan.
Ruthan can
Yes, you
continue.
have. Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions from anyone else? Feel free to unmute and go ahead. Welcome, Azari. Okay, I have another question as well. So you spoke about preparation for a game, and you spoke about, I don't remember the name of the reporter, but they had like a
Peter Drury from England, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about your prep for like a competition? Is it similar? Is it different? How do you do that?
All right. So for instance, now when I'm doing, which I do every Sunday, yeah, I look at the teams that I've been given, right? So I go back for the previous game. I read the reports published in the media, from other media houses about the performance of the team in their previous game. I looked at the players who played. I looked at the things like yellow cards, so forth, so forth. Some players I go into their background, which high school they went to, if they went to university, which is not the norm for a Premier League player in Jamaica. If I'm looking at the coach, for instance, yesterday, Jerome Waite coached Tivoli Gardens. Tivoli Gardens played in the second game yesterday against Montego Bay United. So I researched Jerome Waite and I said, okay, at some point in the commentary, I'm going to make the point that Jerome Waite attended Wolmer's. Jerome Waite was a distance runner for Wolmer's at Champs. Jerome Waite won 4 Premier League titles with Arnett Gardens. Jerome Waite under 20 coach, so forth, so forth. So if the camera cut to Jerome Waite, I had something from Jerome Waite to spit out just the same. Then I looked at Montego Bay United, I looked at their lineup, and I picked a couple of players. So I picked Brian Brown, who's one of their strikers, and I went into his background. He's 31. He was the Golden Boot winner in the then Red Stripe Premier League in 2014, 10 years ago. He scored 18 goals in his 31 games that season. He started at Montego Bay United. He also went to Harborview, where he made his name, scored the record number of goals when he was a Harborview player. Harborview sent him on loan to various clubs in the United States, so he spent a lot of time overseas in the US, came back, now back with Montego Bay United again, and trying to nurture the young strikers. Yeah, so those kind of things, you pick individual players and you develop it in your mind. What I try to do, I write down and make a lot of jottings, but say for instance, and that's the same example, but I'm using it in a different way. If I'm going to interview, say, the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, I spend the night before doing my final reading and writing down questions. So I write like 30 questions that I want to ask her based on the subject matter. Then I read over those questions. Then I wake up early the next morning and I read over the questions again. And then I walk into the interview and I don't carry a script because it's here. So I challenge myself to be able to remember. And remember, I'm not going sequentially. Question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know the things I prepared for. They're all here. And depending on how the conversation flows, I can always pluck something from here or just not pluck anything from here. Just based on what she's saying, just feed off that. So that's how I prepare the night before. I put it all here. I visualize the game. I visualize Brian Brown scoring. I visualize the camera cutting to Jerome Waite. I visualize this, that. And if they happen, I have something. And then I leave myself clear in the moments where a goal is scored, just come up with something spontaneous. So it is mental exercise, and I love it. You know, it challenges you. And when you hit the nail, you say, right, you're that shot, or sometimes I say, shit, I messed that up because, so it's a challenge.
Thank you. As very curious about that one in particular. Guys, any more questions? You guys, please. We'll have George for a couple more minutes. So feel free to pick his brain. There was also, well, I do have some off topic. You mentioned it as well. Podcast. I wanted you to recommend some of your favorite podcasts to us because I'm a huge podcaster. I was curious about that. Do you have any that you recommend?
Stephen A. Smith, Dan Patrick Show. So I like to watch a lot of US podcasts, and I watch a lot of podcasts on Al Jazeera, and on France DW. You see how far I'm going? Because here's another thing again. When I wake up in the morning, I read newspapers from all over. So I read from South Africa, I read from Japan Times, I read Times of India. Then I go to the UK, I read the Guardian, I read the Daily Mail, I read the Telegraph.
What is happening in South Africa that you're so interested in?
No, it's just because it's the foremost economy in Africa. So it would be either that or Nigeria. Because I'm looking at
anything in Africa is happening.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
You hit the nail on the head. So that's the kind of thing. So the podcasts are a lot of things are on YouTube. I even watch Club Sheshe to see what Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco get up to. So, and I watch sometimes watch My Two Cents with Tulux or in the Curly Lox's podcast, I still keep close to the pulse of entertainment. So there's a thing I like to watch on YouTube in Jamaica called TEF, the entertainment feed, where you talk about all that, where the TikTok of them up to, just so you know what's happening in a little 15-minute, 8-minute segment. Sometimes you might be, you know, fixing your shoes or looking for a tie to wear tomorrow, and you have it playing in the background. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, Jason.
And of course, I watch Daily Show still, and I watch Jimmy Fallon. I watch Jimmy Kimmel, and yeah, Seth Meyers. Yeah, I watch those guys.
Quality.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys. Well, any more questions? I'd love some more questions. Go ahead, Abigail.
Hello. So my question is, how do you stay objective and unbiased in reporting? Because at times, like especially sports, for instance, you would have this team that you prefer over the other, and I don't know. Sometimes it will come across as favoritism.
Well, listen, Abigail, I have that struggle when I'm reporting on Manchester United because it's my team, but them just so worthless. So it pain my heart sometimes. But no, when you get into the swing of things, Abigail, you realize that it's not an issue because if Manchester United lost, Manchester United lost. Yeah, if Manchester United were rubbish, they were rubbish. There's no two ways about it. So when you're reporting, you have to report the facts. As a commentator, yeah, as a commentator, when you are analyzing, you have to again focus on the task at hand and take your personal preferences out of it. I'm a big Arnott Gardens fan in the Royal Navy Premier League, but when I am commentating, I don't give Arnott a better commentary than the team that they're playing. I just call it as I see it, even though the whole world knows that me is a junglist by heart. So the point I'm making is that I can see before you go in, it may seem like an issue. But once you get to the swing of things, you realize that it's not hard to focus and report on what the facts are in front of you, even though you have your biases in terms of players you like, teams you like, and so forth.
Thanks, George. Alika has her hand up. Alika, go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening, everyone. So basically, when what motivates you to try like new topics or like challenging topics? Like, what motivates you to try them?
I'm motivated by the fact that I want to test. You see, for me, it's a constant test of your competence and your abilities. So I always want to try to see whether I can. For instance, I've never commentated rugby before. I'd love to commentate rugby to see if the commentating skills I've taken from track and field, from football, from cricket, from netball, if they can be brought in. So the motivation is the challenge of seeing if you can meet the mark based on your experiences. I always want to test my experiences, my level of experience, to see if it is good, if it is useful in a new area. So that is the motivation to test, to see where I am. Maybe I'm not so good, but if I brush up and I'll come back again looking at the errors I made. But it is constantly trying to test yourself to see if you are competent at the required level and if you can bring the experiences you have in life so far into this new, fresh area that you've never done before.
Thanks, George. We're about we're at the wrap-up phase. But Azari actually has a question. He wrote in, how did you branch off into commentary?
You know, it was almost by accident, you know. So I was doing reporting, of course, and a friend of mine was working at Sportsmax as a producer. So when I was exclusively in radio at Nationwide, just making my way, you know, never even have the name for myself yet. And she just called me out of the blue one day. So when I tell her about quality work, she said, George, I knew her from primary school, but she was older than me. Yeah, she said, George, I've been listening to you on Nationwide. You don't sound bad, you know. Sound like you know a thing or two about sports. How would you like to do some commentary? And I said, me? Commentate? Hell no, I can't commentate. She said, yes, of course you can. Come and we will tell you what we want you to do. And if you struggle, I'll hold your hand and so forth, so forth. But we're embarking on this thing with Sportsmax and we don't want to use the established commentators that are around. We want to build our own people. And since you're young, we can try and fail with you and try and fail again until you get to there. But I think you have the potential to do it. And I went there as a non-believer, and the rest is history. So it was because I was doing good work at Nationwide. She thought that she could take a chance with me. So again, nothing recommends you like the work you do.
I'm a firm believer in that too.
Oh, by the way, I said friend from primary school. So the last time I had seen her was in primary school. And then, so she went to was like 40 years, 15 years later. I've never spoken to this girl. She just called me and goes, "Hi, you remember so and so?" I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." She said, "Well, yeah." So there you go.
Wow. Those connections you get built in primary and high school and prep school, just
There you
you're
go.
still working hard.
Yeah, man.
Guys, we're gonna bring it to an end. George, thank you so much. As I said, I'm really honest. It really did help me. I never really quite understood what networking was, personally. Like you're supposed to go to an event and now it's have these mixers and all these things. Okay, I shake your hand and what does it mean? But really and truly, it is about the work that you do and the kind of person that you build yourself to be that will allow people to want to reach out to you. Ruth and Azari still have questions, but please, yeah, we'll have a couple more minutes. So go ahead, Ruth, what was your question?
Sorry about that. I just wanted to find out, Mr. Davis, how do you strike the balance between, I know it's about networking and stuff, but how do you strike the balance between your personal life and your professional life, especially at this stage in your career?
Boy, Ruth, and that's the toughest question at the end. Ruth, and that's the part because I spend a lot of time out of my house, and I spend a lot of time reading when I should be doing other things. Yeah? So it's difficult. If you don't have an understanding partner, you are dead in the water. And that is crucial. So you're either going to be a bachelor or you're going to understanding wife or understanding husband or whatever, because it's demanding, especially when you do so many things across so many areas. And especially if you want to be good, you don't just want to just be another face in the crowd, you want to stand out. It takes a lot. So it's very difficult to balance. It's the most difficult part of the whole business, that balance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Azari, you had a question. Okay, not much of a question, but will you be on commentary for the Arnett Gardens versus Harborview game?
Actually, I did the two yesterday on Sunday, and I'm at CVM now. I'm going to do makeup for a show I do on CVM Monday to Friday at 6:30 called Lead Story. So because of that, I'm not available for Monday night game. So the junglers have to do it up later.
Oh, George, it sounds like the conversation has healed your throat. You sounding better than you did at the start, honestly.
Yeah, man, much better. Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. But yeah, you say you have something at 6:30. I really appreciate the time that you spent. Just imparting all of your wisdom and your experience. Everybody was much appreciating it, and I know we've learned a lot. So thanks again, George. We hope we can do this again, something similar like this, and all the best with your career and your reporting and your show at 6:30.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for coming. I really hope that I would have given you something to work with. All right, thank you very much.
All right, you take care, George. Guys,